Birchwood Center, 4:47 on a Friday. Late October light slanted through the blinds. Amelia Thorne, 7 years old, stood silent in the middle of the room, the way she had been silent for 23 months. Maggie Thorne, Billionaire CEO, was signing transfer papers after 3 weeks of failure at Birchwood, the 5th center in 2 years. The man mopping the floor stood up. Daniel Reeve looked at Linnea. "Let me try. 10 minutes. Linnea nodded. Maggie's pen stopped. "You're a janitor." Daniel didn't answer. He knelt, set a wooden rabbit on the floor, and turned his back to the child. 4 minutes later, Amelia touched his shoulder. "Daddy?" 3 weeks earlier, on a clear Tuesday in early October, Maggie Thorne drove her daughter up the long gravel road to Birchwood Center for the first time. The drive took 40 minutes from Asheville. She had made the same drive 4 times before with 4 different specialists in 3 different cities. She no longer carried hope in the car with her. She carried only the question of what to try next, because doing nothing felt worse than failing again. Birchwood was nothing like the others. No glass-walled lobby, no logo on a backlit sign. It was a converted farmhouse on 3 acres of land, the wood weathered to a soft gray, the porch deep and cluttered with rocking chairs. Amelia held her hand all the way up the steps and said nothing, which was no different from any other day. Linnea Fairbrook met them at the door. She was 58, silver-haired, with the kind of stillness that came from spending decades listening to children who did not speak. She did not promise anything. She offered tea. She offered to walk Amelia through the rooms before any paperwork was signed. A man came down the hallway carrying a wooden crate of toys. He was tall, mid-30s, dressed in dark work pants and a faded canvas jacket. He nodded at Linnea, glanced at Amelia for half a second, and kept walking. He did not say a word to Maggie. She did not look at him twice. He was the maintenance staff. He was furniture. Amelia, however, turned her head and watched him the entire length of the corridor. Linnea brought them into the small assessment room and explained the group method. Amelia would sit with 3 other children, all of them somewhere on the spectrum of selective mutism or trauma-induced silence. No one would push her to speak. No one would ask her to perform. The work was patience. Maggie signed the consent forms because she did not know what else to do. That night, Daniel Reeve drove home to Black Mountain in his old gray pickup. His daughter, Hannah, 8 years old, was waiting at the kitchen table with the macaroni and cheese she had reheated by herself. She told him about her day, about the new girl who had joined the group, the girl who did not talk but smiled when Hannah told her about a wooden rabbit. "What's her name?" Daniel asked. "Amelia." He went still. He knew the name Thorne. The local papers had printed Henry Thorne's obituary 3 years before, and the family was the kind of name a person did not forget in this part of the state. He did not say any of this to his daughter. He read her a chapter of her book, and the spine of the book pressed white against his fingers because he was holding it too hard. After Hannah fell asleep, he opened the bottom drawer of his desk for the first time in 3 years. The framed PhD diploma from Vanderbilt was lying face down under a stack of old tax returns. He did not pick it up. He closed the drawer. 2 weeks passed. Amelia did not speak. Maggie's patience, which had been worn thin for 23 months, ran out. She made an appointment with a residential institute in Connecticut. She told her assistant to draft transfer paperwork. Daniel, every group session, left a new wooden toy on the corner table. A small horse one day, a bear the next, a rabbit, sanded smooth, with painted eyes. Amelia chose his toy every time, not the plastic ones, not the bright ones the center had bought new. She chose the wooden ones, and she held them through the whole session. On the Friday, that became the Friday, Maggie arrived with the transfer papers in her bag. Linnea met her at the door, blocked it gently with her body, and asked for one more session. The last one. Maggie almost said no. She came inside instead. Amelia stood in the middle of the room. Daniel was kneeling, mopping a sticky place on the floor. That was the moment everything changed. After Amelia spoke the word, after she rested her head against Daniel's shoulder for 30 seconds and walked back to her mother, the room did not move. The other children stared. The 2 assistant therapists in the corner did not breathe. Maggie held her daughter against her chest and felt the small body against hers, warm and real, and she could not look away from the man kneeling on the floor. She did not thank him. Her voice came out flat and professional, the voice she used in board meetings, the voice she had built over 20 years of running things. "Who is he?" Linnea answered without looking up from her clipboard. "I told you, he works here." Daniel rose, said something quiet to Linnea, and walked out of the room. His hands shook on the doorknob. He did not go back to the supply closet. He went to the woodshed behind the building, sat down on a sawdust-covered stool, and put his head in his hands for a long time. Maggie watched him go. She did not call after him. She held her daughter against her chest and counted, very slowly, the seconds it took for her own breathing to come back under her control. Maggie drove back to her Asheville office that night. She did not sleep. At 11, she called the head of human resources at Thorne Hospitality and told him she needed a complete background check, executive level, on a man named Daniel Reeve, currently employed as maintenance at Birchwood Speech and Language Center. She told him she did not care what time he had to wake people up to get it done. The report came back at 6 in the morning. PhD in Child Clinical Psychology, Vanderbilt University, 2014. 8 years at Boston Children's Hospital. The Reeve-Fairbrook method, published in the Journal of Child Psychology in 2018, 247 citations, the standard protocol for selective mutism cases at 3 of the top pediatric trauma units in the country. Resignation in May of 2021. His wife, Sarah Reeve, deceased the same month. The internal report did not list a cause. Maggie read the report twice. She did not call Linnea. She did not call Daniel. She drove to Black Mountain at 6:45 in the morning, parked across the gravel lot from the Birchwood porch, and sat in her car for 40 minutes without moving. The sun came up over the ridgeline. The frost on her windshield melted in patches. She did not turn on the heat. When Daniel arrived for his shift, he saw the black sedan. He saw her face through the windshield. He stopped halfway across the lot. She did not get out. She rolled down her window. "I'll pay you whatever you ask," she said. "Whatever the number is." "I don't practice anymore," Daniel said. 3 years now. "Yesterday you practiced for 4 minutes. He stood in the gravel and looked at her. The morning was cold, his breath visible. He did not know what to say to that, so he asked something else. A question that was not the question. "Why didn't you call me on the phone?" For a moment, her composure cracked, just at the edge. "Because I didn't know how to ask a man I'd called a janitor." He did not answer. He went inside and started his morning rounds, and his hands were not steady for the rest of the day. That afternoon, Daniel picked Hannah up from school. She climbed into the truck and pulled a folded piece of paper out of her backpack and handed it to him. It was a drawing, a wooden rabbit, 2 stick figures holding hands. No words on it. "She gave it to me, Dad. She said my name." She said Hannah. Daniel held the drawing on the steering wheel for a long time before he started the truck. Daniel did not answer Maggie's offer for 2 days. He came back to Birchwood, mopped the floors, repaired a loose hinge on the supply room, replaced a bulb in the hallway, and stayed away from the room where Amelia was. He did not look at Maggie when he passed her in the corridor. She did not stop him. She did not push. She arrived every morning, sat in the waiting room with her daughter, and did not enter the group session room. She brought paperwork from the company and worked from a leather portfolio on her lap. She drank the bad coffee from the lobby pot. She waited. On the 3rd day, Linnea pulled Daniel into the woodshed and shut the door behind them. The conversation lasted almost an hour. Neither of them raised their voice. "You don't have to be her clinician," Linnea said. "You only have to be in the room. That's what you did last Friday. That was enough. Sarah needed me to be in the room, too." His voice was level. "I was. You saw the result. Sarah was sick. You were not your wife's psychiatrist. You were her husband. You loved her, Daniel. That's not a crime." He sat on the wooden stool in the corner, the same stool he had sat on the night Amelia had spoken his name. He did not answer for a long time. The shed smelled of cedar and old varnish. He could hear, faintly, through the back wall, the sound of children laughing in the playroom. Linnea waited for 10 minutes. When it became clear he was not going to say anything more, she touched his shoulder once and went back to the front of the building to finish the day's paperwork. He stayed in the shed until the light changed. That afternoon, Maggie came looking for him. She found the woodshed door open. She did not step inside. She stood at the threshold with her arms crossed, her city coat too thin for the October wind. "I'm not asking you to save her," she said. "I'm asking you to sit in the room. Like last week." Daniel looked up at her. He had not told anyone, not in 3 years, what he was about to tell a stranger leaning against a doorframe. He told her about Sarah in short sentences, postpartum depression, the crash that came months after Hannah was born. He had been the country's specialist on children who lost their voices, and he had not seen, until it was too late, that the woman sleeping next to him had stopped speaking a month before she died. "I don't trust my hands anymore," he said, "not with someone else's child." Maggie did not soften. She did not look pitying. She said, "She walked over to you on Friday. She has not walked over to me in 23 months. I don't need you to trust your hands. I need you to give her a chance to trust hers." Then she left. She did not wait for an answer. Daniel finished his shift, picked Hannah up from school, and drove home. At the crosswalk in front of the elementary school, Hannah looked up at him and said, "Dad, you're sad today." He did not answer her. He squeezed her small hand a little too tightly when the light changed. That night, after Hannah had brushed her teeth and gone to bed, Daniel stood in the kitchen with his phone in his hand for almost 20 minutes. He typed and deleted 3 different messages. The one he finally sent to Maggie Thorne was 4 words long. 1 week. Then I decide. The trial week began on a Monday. Linnea, with no fuss, retitled Daniel's role in the staff log as therapy aide. It was not an accurate title, but it was enough. It put him in the room as something other than the man with the mop. He did not call what he did therapy. He called it fixing toys together. 3 sessions a week, 45 minutes each, just him and Amelia at the small work table in the back of the woodshed, with the door open so Linnea could see in from the hallway. He let the child hold the tools. He named them as he passed them across the table. Phillips head, flathead, 1/8-inch drill bit. Amelia did not speak, but she touched the tools. She lined the screws up by color along the edge of the table, brass, then steel, then the black ones, and she handed him the screwdriver each time he held out his hand. She watched the door every time it opened. Daniel saw the watching. He did not say anything to Maggie about it. He told Linnea, that night, in the small office at the front of the building, "She's waiting for her father. She doesn't believe he's gone." Maggie, behind the one-way glass of the observation booth, heard him say it through the audio relay. She did not know her daughter was still waiting. She had assumed, the way the textbooks had told her to assume, that the silence was grief, and that the grief would lift on its own. That night, Maggie sat on the edge of Amelia's bed in the big house off Town Mountain Road. The lamp was low. She had not asked her daughter the question, not in 2 years, because she had been afraid of the answer. She asked it now. "Are you waiting for Daddy to come back?" Amelia did not nod. She did not shake her head. She blinked, slowly, and a tear ran down her cheek and onto the pillow. Maggie left the room. She closed the door. She stood in the hallway, leaned her back against the wall, and cried with her hand over her mouth so the sound would not carry down the hall. The next morning she came to Birchwood. She did not go to the therapy wing. She walked around to the back of the property and found Daniel in the woodshed, sanding the leg of a wooden chair. She handed him a paper coffee cup. She did not say a word. He took it. He nodded once. She left. He drank the coffee while he worked. It was still warm when he finished it. He kept the empty cup on the workbench for the rest of the afternoon and did not throw it away. The week went on. Maggie came every morning with a fresh cup. She never said anything when she handed it over. He never said anything when he took it. By the 4th day, Linnea noticed and did not comment. By the 5th, Hannah came along once after school and waved at Maggie through the lobby window, and Maggie waved back, and neither adult mentioned the wave to the other. That night, Hannah looked up from her math homework at the kitchen table. "Dad, does Amelia know you're a doctor?" Daniel froze with his hand on the kettle. "How do you know?" "I saw the picture on Mr. Linnea's wall when we went there with you that one time. The one with you and the medal." He did not answer her. He walked over to her chair and put his arms around her shoulders and held her there for a while, and the kettle whistled, and neither of them moved to turn it off. The same week, in a glass-walled office on the 18th floor of the Thorne Hospitality Tower in Charlotte, Preston Vance sat across from Maggie at the long marble conference table. He was 51, silver at the temples, expensive suit, the smile of a man who had been the firm's chief financial officer for 9 years and who had never, in those 9 years, taken his eyes off the chief executive's chair. He was Henry Thorne's first cousin. He had stood at Henry's funeral with one hand on Maggie's elbow and the other holding a folder of estate paperwork. He led with concern. He asked about Amelia. He used the right voice. Then he mentioned, gently, an institute in Connecticut he had researched. Residential. Top tier. A change of environment, he said, often did wonders. Maggie said no. His tone shifted, not in volume but in temperature. The board, he said, had been talking. There were questions about her focus. There were questions about whether the personal demands of her daughter's condition were affecting her judgment on critical accounts. He slid a document across the marble. A draft motion, temporary transfer of executive authority. Pending review. She read it. Her face did not change, but the blood left it. Who is behind this? The board. I'm only the messenger. He left the office. She stayed at the table. She read the draft a second time, and on the second reading she saw what she had missed. The document was dated 6 weeks earlier. It had been drafted before she had ever taken Amelia to Birchwood. Preston had been preparing this for months. She called her personal attorney from the car. The news was not good. Preston already had 2 firm votes on the 9-member board. He needed 3 more for a majority. He was close. The attorney told her, gently, that fighting it publicly would only confirm whatever narrative Preston wanted to build about her judgment. She thanked him and hung up and sat in the parking garage for 10 minutes with the engine running. She drove to Birchwood that afternoon and did not go home first. She found Daniel in the hallway, on his way out of the woodshed with a piece of sandpaper still in his hand. He looked at her face once. He did not ask. He went to the lobby, bought 2 coffees from the machine, and brought one back to her. "The week is over," she said. "I'm staying," he said. She did not tell him about Preston. He did not ask. They sat side by side on the wooden bench outside the therapy room, not speaking, for almost 15 minutes. Through the door, they could hear Hannah and Amelia in the playroom. They could hear Hannah laughing at something. They could not hear Amelia. Through the small observation window, Maggie could see her daughter, head thrown back, mouth open, laughing without any sound coming out. Maggie watched her daughter laugh. Daniel watched Maggie. He did not say anything. He pulled a folded napkin from his coat pocket and held it out to her, and she took it. That evening, at home, Hannah climbed into Daniel's lap on the porch swing. "Dad, is Amelia's mom really sad?" He did not answer right away. "Help her, Dad." He held his daughter tightly and looked out across the dark yard toward the pines. For the first time in 3 years, when he opened the bottom drawer of his desk after Hannah had gone to bed, his hands were not shaking. Daniel increased the sessions to 4 a week. Amelia spoke more. Not sentences, not yet. Single words, cracked and quiet. Rabbit, red, Hannah. Hannah was the 3rd word, she said, and Daniel had to leave the room for a minute when he heard it because his eyes were burning and he did not want her to see. While the sessions deepened, Preston Vance was working a quieter angle. He had hired a private investigator to dig through Birchwood's records, looking for anything that could be used to characterize Maggie's choice of provider as poor judgment. Small, unaccredited center. Maintenance worker in the room. Something the board could be made to fear. Linnea found out about the investigator the way she found out about most things, slowly, through the people who answered her phones. She also found, that same week, while clearing out the locked archive closet in preparation for an audit, a patient file from 2019. A boy, 3 years old. Verbal trauma following a contested divorce. 8 months of treatment at Birchwood. Discharged with full speech recovery. The patient's name was Theo Vance. The treating clinician's signature at the bottom of the discharge summary was Daniel Reeve, Ph.D. Linnea brought the file to the woodshed at the end of the day and set it on the workbench in front of Daniel. He did not remember Theo. He had treated more than 400 children in his 8 years at Boston Children's, and the names blurred. But the signature was his. The dates were his. The methodology in the case notes, the careful pacing, the reliance on transitional objects, was unmistakably his. He read the discharge summary twice. The boy had been 3 when he started treatment and just over 4 when he finished. Daniel could almost picture him, a small, dark-haired child who had liked, according to his own notes, a wooden train. Preston knew, Linnea said. He had to. You treated his only son. I don't remember the boy. He remembers you. She let him sit with it for a moment. If Preston finds out you're working with Amelia, he won't just go after Maggie. He'll go after you, your wife, your license. He'll tell the board you're unstable and that Maggie put her child in the care of an unstable man. And the board will believe him because he says it well. Daniel sat in the woodshed for a long time after she left. The light failed outside. He did not turn on the work lamp. He sat in the dim until he could not see his own hands, and he thought about a boy he could not remember, and a wife he could not save, and a child who had walked across a carpet last Friday and said his name. For the first time in 3 years, the thought that came to him was not retreat. It was the thought of standing. He did not call Maggie. He drove to her house in Asheville. It was the first time he had ever been to it. The gate was open. The driveway was long and dark, and the porch lamp was on. Maggie answered the door herself, in jeans and a sweatshirt, her hair down. She had not expected him. She did not say anything. She let him in. He set the file on the kitchen island. She read it standing. She did not sit. When she finished, she set the file down very carefully, with both hands flat against it. He's using my child, she said, to take a company from a man who saved his. I don't remember Theo. I don't remember anyone, really, from those last 3 years. Theo remembers. That's all you need. Monday morning. Maggie's assistant forwarded an email at 7:30. The board had called an emergency vote for that Friday. The motion to transfer executive authority had been moved up. The vote would happen in 5 days. She read the email twice. She did not forward it to Daniel. She did not tell him. Wednesday afternoon. Group session. Amelia brought the old drawing with her, the one with the rabbit and the 2 stick figures, and laid it on the work table for Daniel to fix the cardboard frame. Hannah was there because it was a group day and not a private one. She knocked over a small carton of milk, and the white pooled under the table and along the floorboards. Daniel knelt under the table to wipe it up. His back was to the room. He did not see Amelia stand up from her chair. She walked across the carpet. She placed her small hand on his shoulder. It was the same gesture Hannah had used on him in the spring of 2021, the day of Sarah's funeral, when he had been kneeling at the kitchen sink with his face in his hands and could not stand up. Amelia opened her mouth. This time it was not a question. Daddy's gone. The room did not move. The other children, the assistant, Linnea in the doorway, all of them held still. Behind the one-way glass, Maggie's hand pressed flat against the surface. Daniel turned. Slowly. He did not cry. His voice broke only on the first syllable and then steadied. I know, sweetheart, Daddy's gone. Mama doesn't know, Amelia said. She's still waiting. Behind the glass, Maggie's knees gave out. Linnea was already moving, opening the door of the observation booth, helping her up, walking her into the therapy room. Maggie crossed the carpet and went to her knees and held her daughter. For the first time in 23 months, Amelia held her back. She did not let go for a long time. Mama, she said, into Maggie's collarbone. Let's stop waiting. Hannah stood in the corner of the room with her eyes very wide. She looked at her father. He looked at her. She ran across the room and put her arms around his neck, and neither of them said anything. That night, at Maggie's house off Town Mountain Road, the 4 of them ate dinner together for the first time. Amelia ate 2 bowls of soup. Hannah ate a piece of bread bigger than her face. After dinner, the 2 girls fell asleep on the long couch in the living room with a cartoon playing low on the screen. Maggie covered them with a blanket and led Daniel out to the porch. The mountains were dark. The stars were out. She did not look at him when she spoke. Friday, the board votes. They're going to try to take the company from me. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because I didn't want you helping me out of pity. I wanted you helping my daughter for my daughter's sake, not for mine. He looked at her for a moment. I'll come with you on Friday. She started to say no. Not as the janitor, he said. As Dr. Reeve. She did not answer. She looked out at the dark mountains for a long time. The wind moved in the pines below the porch. Somewhere down the slope, a single porch light was on at a neighbor's house. Maggie watched the light, and Daniel watched her watch it, and after a while she said, very quietly, okay. She did not turn to face him when she said it. She did not need to. Daniel reached out and, for the first time, took her hand. He held it for the length of one breath. Then he let go and went back inside to wake Hannah for the drive home. Friday. The Thorne Hospitality boardroom in Charlotte was on the 20th floor, all glass and steel, with a long table of polished walnut and 9 high-backed chairs. The view through the south wall ran clear to the Catawba River. Preston Vance arrived 20 minutes early with 2 attorneys and a forensic psychiatrist he had retained from a firm in Atlanta. He was confident. He had counted the votes twice. He believed he had the majority. He drank a small espresso from the executive lounge and made a phone call to his wife. He did not mention Daniel Reeve. He did not know Daniel was coming. Maggie arrived 5 minutes late. She walked in holding her daughter's hand. The room went quiet. 2 of the older board members, who had not seen Amelia in person in over a year, set their pens down. Preston rose. "Margaret, this is a professional meeting. With respect, Amelia should not You want to vote that I am unfit to lead this company because my child does not speak." Her voice was even. "Then listen to her speak." She knelt next to Amelia at the head of the table. Amelia, holding her mother's hand, turned to face the board. She did not perform. She did not look at the strangers. She looked at her mother and answered her mother's questions, the way she had been answering them all week at home. Her name, her age, the name of her school. It was halting. It was quiet. It was enough. One of the older board members, a woman who had been on the board for 22 years, audibly drew her hand back from the document in front of her. "I'm withdrawing my vote," she said. "On the record." Preston pivoted fast. One sentence proves nothing. Mrs. Thorne placed her daughter in an unaccredited regional center in the care of a maintenance worker, an unlicensed. The boardroom door opened. Daniel Reeve walked in. He was wearing the only suit he owned, a charcoal one Hannah had seen him wear once before, at her mother's funeral. He did not have his diploma with him. He had a single manila folder. He set it on the walnut table in front of the chairman and turned to the room. His face was calm. His hands, for the first time in 3 years inside a room of strangers, did not shake. For the first time in 3 years, he introduced himself by his full name. "Daniel Reeve, Ph.D. I'm the clinician who treated Mr. Vance's son." The room went still. Preston's face lost its color in stages, the way paper goes pale at the edges before it tears. Daniel did not raise his voice. He spoke to the board, not to Preston. "Mrs. Thorne brought her daughter to a specialist that Mr. Vance himself once chose for his own child. If you intend to declare that judgment unfit, you are also declaring that Mr. Vance was an unfit father 10 years ago. I would ask you to consider whether you are prepared to do that on the record." The older board member, the one who had withdrawn her vote, turned in her chair to face Preston directly. "Preston," she said, "how is Theo?" Preston did not answer. He looked down at the table. His attorney leaned over and whispered something to him. He did not respond to that either. The chairman called the vote. The motion failed 7-2. Preston gathered his papers, did not look at Maggie, and walked out of the room without speaking. In the car driving back to Asheville that evening, Amelia fell asleep with her head against the window. Maggie pulled out her phone at a red light and typed a single line to Daniel, who was driving his truck home in the lane beside her. "Thank you." He answered before the light changed. "I didn't do anything." She walked over on her own. 2 weeks passed. The first snow came to Black Mountain in early December, light, the kind that dusted the rooftops and melted by noon. Amelia attended Birchwood 3 afternoons a week. She spoke more, in her own slow way, in short, clear sentences. She called Daniel Mr. Reeve. It was her own choice. He understood, without anyone needing to explain it to him, that she was holding the word daddy in reserve, keeping it for the man who was gone, while she made room for someone else. Maggie and Daniel did not name the thing that was growing between them. They saw each other at Birchwood. They saw each other at the small coffee shop across the road from the center. They saw each other at the school pickup line because Hannah and Amelia had asked, and gotten permission, to be in the same after-school art club at the Asheville Public Library on Tuesdays. The news from Charlotte came quietly. Preston Vance had resigned for personal reasons. The board did not release a statement. Maggie did not pursue him. There was no point in pursuing him. He had lost the only thing he had wanted, and that was enough. She heard, through a mutual contact, that he had taken his son Theo to a cabin on the Outer Banks for the rest of the year. She did not pass the information on to Daniel. One evening, Maggie invited Daniel and Hannah to the house for dinner. Amelia opened the door herself. She hugged Hannah first, hard. Then, after a small hesitation, she hugged Daniel around the waist, the way a child hugs an adult they trust. She did not call him Daddy, she said. Into his coat, Mr. Reeve. After dinner, the two girls fell asleep again on the long couch with the cartoon playing low. Maggie and Daniel went out to the porch. The night was cold. Their breath was visible in the porch light. "Are you going to go back to it?" she asked. "The work?" "Linnea wants me to start a part-time program. Pediatric trauma, specifically. I'm thinking about it." A long silence stretched between them. She did not look at him. "I don't know if I'm thanking you, Daniel, or if I need you. It might be both." He did not answer in words. He set his hand on the porch rail beside hers, not touching, just close. She did not move hers away. Inside the house, Amelia stirred on the couch. She lifted her head, looked out through the glass door at the two of them on the porch, smiled very faintly to herself, and closed her eyes again. Daniel stayed another half hour. Maggie made him a thermos of coffee for the drive back to Black Mountain. He carried Hannah out to the truck because she had not stirred since dinner. Maggie stood in the open front door with a blanket around her shoulders and watched until the truck's taillights turned out of the long driveway. The next afternoon, at Birchwood, Amelia handed Daniel a folded piece of paper at the start of their session. It was a drawing, 4 stick figures this time, holding hands in a line. The smallest one had a wooden rabbit in her free hand. There were no labels under the figures. Daniel did not ask which one was which. He thanked her and put the drawing in the inside pocket of his coat, where it would stay, folded and unfolded many times, for a long time after. The week before Christmas, Birchwood opened a new wing. The brass plate beside the door read Reeve Fairbrook Pediatric Trauma Wing. Daniel had returned to the field, part-time, on his own terms. The Vanderbilt diploma had come out of the bottom drawer and was now framed and hanging on the wall of his small new office, beside a photograph of Hannah at age 6 and a pencil drawing Amelia had made of a rabbit. He had not put the diploma there for himself, Hannah had asked. The opening reception was small. Family, staff, 2 board members from Birchwood, no press. Maggie came in late, hung her coat by the door, and stood at the back of the room. Linnea gave a short speech and did not mention Daniel by name, which was what he had asked for. She did mention, briefly, that the wing would specialize in trauma-induced selective mutism and that the program would be free of charge for any family in the 4 surrounding counties who could not afford private treatment. Maggie had funded it quietly through a foundation under her late husband's name. Daniel had only learned about the funding the week before. Amelia ran across the floor when she saw Daniel. She had something in both hands. A small wooden rabbit, sanded carefully, the eyes painted unevenly because she had painted them herself. She had carved it on Saturday afternoons in the woodshed with him for the past month. "For Mr. Reeve," she said. He took it. He did not trust himself to speak for a moment. He thanked her. Hannah pulled Amelia by the hand toward the lobby Christmas tree to see the lights. Daniel and Maggie stood next to each other at the back of the room. They did not speak. Outside the tall window, snow had started to fall in earnest, the way it falls when it intends to stay through the night. "Amelia asked me a question last week," Maggie said. "She asked if she could have a new dad. What did you say?" "I said I didn't know. I still don't." Daniel looked out at the snow. "I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm just here." "I know," Maggie said. "That's the problem." She put her hand over his on the windowsill. This time there was contact. He did not pull away. Her hand was cold from the air against the window. His was warm from the heater behind them. Neither of them said anything for what might have been a minute. Across the room, Hannah was lifting Amelia up to see the top ornament on the tree. And Amelia was laughing, a small bright sound that carried. At the end of the day, the 4 of them walked out together to the parking lot. Hannah was in the middle, holding Daniel's hand on one side and Amelia's hand on the other. Maggie walked beside Daniel. The snow had begun to settle on their shoulders and in their hair. Amelia stopped walking, suddenly, for no particular reason, and looked up. "Look," she said, loud and clear in the cold air. "There's a star." It was not a star. It was a single decorative bulb on the top of the smallest pine by the parking lot, glowing yellow against the gray sky. Nobody corrected her. Daniel looked up at the bulb. Then he looked at the small girl beside him. "Yeah," he said, "there's a star." The four of them kept walking, slowly, toward the cars at the far end of the lot. The yellow light stayed on behind them. The snow fell harder. None of them spoke again,